The anime entitled Hakkenden 8 Dogs of the East talks about Utsuka Village, which is the homeland of Shino, Imazuka, Sosu, Inukala, and Hamaji. Suddenly, the village is struck by a deadly plague, which later is obliterated forever. Almost all villagers died due to the plague. Suddenly, a mysterious man comes and approaches Shino, Sosuke, and Hamaji. The man tells them that they will be given the option to die to live in one condition. That night, the man changed their lives forever. 5 years ago, everyone in Utsuka village died from the plague and only 3 people survived. They are Shino, Inuzuka, Sosuke, Inukala, and Hamaji. They took shelter in a church near another village which is near a dangerous dark forest. One day, Sasuke walks home with Kenta through the village and everyone seems to be talking about him. The people show an obvious dislike for Sosuke, afraid that he might bring the plague to their village. Sosuke asks Kenta to walk away so that Kenta won't get in trouble at school because of getting along with him. However, Kenta doesn't seem to care about the matter and calls the people cowards. Sosuke recalls how the fire burned everything in his village, including corpses and the villagers, until nothing was left so that the plague did not spread. Sosuke then gives him a talisman necklace. Kenta accepts it, but he admits that he doesn't believe in God. Sosuke doesn't mind Kenta's belief, but he knows that as a friend, Kenta will definitely trust him. Arriving at the church, Hamaji comments that he carries a lot. Sosuke tells her that Kenta helped him carry it. Seeing Kenta come in and stand next to Sosuke, Hamaji turns and thanks him. After that, Sosuke tells Shino that he has something to discuss. He mentions Shino, who went to the forest by himself. Murasame corrects his statement, saying that he was with Shino that day. However, Sosuke ignores Murasame and advises Shino not to go to the forest alone. He states she also told Kenta about the same thing and emphasizes once again the dangerous state of the forest as it is filled with an evil aura. Sosuke states he doesn't know what would happen if someone were lured into the darkness by going deep into the forest. Shino is annoyed after finding out that Kenta is the one who had revealed his secret to Sasuke. However, Sosuke feels it's quite strange that normal people can be drawn into the darkness while going into the forest. Shino then asks him about the possibility that Kenta isn't an ordinary boy, but Sosuke dismisses the thought and believes that it is because they have a close relationship. Shino suspects Sosuke is hiding something, but Sasuke states Kenta reminds him of someone he once knew. Meanwhile, on the way home, Kenta is worried about Shino, who is scolded by Sosuke. Suddenly, he sees a shadowy figure that appears among the trees, but when he tries to chase it, the shadow suddenly disappears. Kenta isn't sure whether the shadow is Shino or not, but when he thinks of the possibility that the figure was a ghost, he runs away in fear. Returning to the church, Sosuke, Shino, Shinpu, and Rome are talking about the summon letter that was sent by the church headquarters. They assume the church has found Murasame's whereabouts. Suddenly, the window next to them is torn apart, and a figure of black algae appears. Shino tells them he found the creature this morning, but he thinks he threw it away. The next morning, Shino, Sosuke, and Hamaji gather at the dining table, getting ready for breakfast. Suddenly, the atmosphere around them changes, and Shinpu informs them that people from the church have arrived. They meet the people who are wearing masks. They tell Shino, Sosuke, and Hamaji to get ready. They talk about their scent, which doesn't smell like humans. Sosuke is not sure if they are sent by the church headquarters. Shino decides to summon Murasame from his arm to attack the masked people who turn out to be empty cloaks without bodies. Moments later, Kenta appears to tell them about the 3 missing young men, and the people in the village link the incident to the church. Kenta then remembers yesterday's incident and tells about the appearance of a female ghost who resembles Shino. Both Sosuke and Shino agree to ask Kenta to go home and stay away from them. It makes Kenta angry and runs outside after throwing away the necklace Sosuke gave him. Meanwhile, Kenta is trapped in a net in the forest and cannot escape. Shino appears to help him, but Kenta tells him about the ghost that resembles Shino, which is controlling a gigantic demonic figure. Sosuke in his dog form joins in and helps releasing Kenta from the net. Meanwhile, Shino transforms Murasame into a sword and defeats the demon. After that, they walk Kenta to his home and return to the church after that. But upon their arrival at the church, they notice that Hamaji is kidnapped. Shinpu then explains about the 5 fox-masked figures who looked for them this morning belong to one of the 4 houses of the sacred beasts under the church's care, Osaki. They then conclude that the reason why the church summoned them is the existence of Murasame inside of Shino or Yoshiro inside of Sosuke. The next morning, Shino and Sosuke leave the village. They are heading out to the church headquarters. Meanwhile, Hamaji, who was kidnapped, protests a lot to her kidnapper. She refuses to wear the kimono that they prepared for her. She even says that the kimono suits Shino better. She also throws out the church habit as she thinks it is boring. After that, she demands several things about her clothes and makes the foxes in the house distraught taking care of the girl. She also complained about the food they serve. The guy who kidnapped her, Osaki Kaname, comments that Hamaji is not a cute girl. However, Hamaji replies that since she was kidnapped and forced to live in that house, they must not complain about her wish. Kaname is surprised by her behavior because, to his knowledge, the girl who survived Otsuka village was beautiful. He states that the rumor is not true. Hamaji then replies that the rumor is true, but the rumor talks about Shino. She even thinks that Shino looks like a doll. Kaname is confused because he thinks that Shino is a male. Hamaji explains that it is a custom to dress boys as girls until they turn 15 to help them grow strong. After that, Kaname states that based on his investigation, he knows that Hamaji is an adopted child and asks her if she is jealous of Shino, who was raised with love. After drinking her tea, Hamaji replies that she is not jealous because Shino and Sosuke have cared for her tenderly since she was little. Meanwhile, Shino and Sosuke just arrive at the capital. They are surprised to see how crowded the capital is. Not long after that, a group of young men who claim the representatives of the church headquarters come. They are in charge to fetch Shino and Sosuke. The people tell them they will take Sosuke and Shino to the church headquarters immediately, but Sosuke states he needs to go to the hotel first because he brings a lot of luggage. The church representatives reply it isn't needed because they have mad arrangements for them. They look at Shino and are suspicious of Shino if he is the one. Just then, a long-haired man named Satomi Ryo appears. He comes to pick up Shino and Sosuke. The people from church headquarters are surprised to find Satomi at that place. Ryo states that Shino and Sosuke are survivors of Otsuka village, and it is his job to be their guardian. Sosuke wonders who the man is, and Shino tells him that he is Satomi Ryo, one of 4 houses of the sacred beasts. They then bring Sosuke and Shino to the hotel. After they arrive, Satomi gets into the car and gets ready to leave. He states he will meet them tomorrow and asks them not to worry about their sister. Satomi promises he will meet them with their sister, and the car drives away. Sosuke then suggests that they enter the hotel. While going in, he asks where Shino met Satomi, but Shino has already left and yells that he wants to look around the city. Sosuke cannot do anything and just let him go. Shino and Murasame walk around a very crowded city. While walking through the town, Shino heard people talking about the presence of a demon at the Phoenix Gate. A guy tells them that the demon doesn't attack humans, but it devours spirits. Shino doesn't seem to care about it and leaves. Murasame says that the demon is actually a human, and a human is a demon. He flies off Shino's shoulder and perches on a shrine's steps. Murasame also states that demons are made by humans and are born from humans' hearts. Shino asks what he means, and Murasame seems to think hard about it. However, he says he gets dizzy and asks Shino to go back. Shino asks Murasame to get Sosuke for him. The crow flies away after that. Just then, someone is thrown out of the shrine and lands on Shino. The monks look angry and tell the man to go away. The man doesn't take it and states that Gempachi must be there. The monks look puzzled by the man's words. One of them explains that they didn't capture a human but a demon. The man named Kobungo Inuda gets angry at them. Suddenly, his father shows up and tells Kobungo not to make a fuss. He approaches Kobungo and forces him to apologize to Father Siren. While threatening Kobungo, Father Siren and the others turn to go back into the shrine. Kobungo then turns to his father, but his father scolds him, telling him it is useless to make noise at that place. They then notice Kobungo is stepping on something. It turns out Shino is still lying helplessly on the ground. Kobungo and his father take care of Shino, who's fainted. While looking at Shino's necklace, Kobungo's father assumes Shino comes from the church. He wants to report to the police, but when Kobungo spots a mark on Shino's arm, he feels that there is an interesting thing coming up. When Shino wakes up, Kobungo takes him to the restaurant. Kobungo regrets taking Shino to the restaurant as he didn't expect that Shino would finish such a meal. Kobungo then asks Shino his hotel name, but Shino doesn't remember. He states that he has sent for someone to pick him up. Just then, Murasame appears and perches on the window. Moreover, Sosuke in his dog form also comes to pick him up. Kobungo wonders seeing a dog and a crow come to pick him up. After that, Shino bids farewell and leaves the restaurant. Kobungo wants to chase him, but is stopped by the waitress who gives him the receipt. Kobungo is shocked to see how much Shino spent on the meal. It is already late afternoon when Shino and the others go back. Along the way, Sosuke nags at Shino who wandered too far. After that, Sosuke asks Shino who the man who treated him earlier is. Shino calmly says he doesn't know. He states that as far as he can remember, the man came out of nowhere and landed on him, and the man paid for the meal to apologize. Later that night, the monks in the shrine gathered. Siren reports that a stray dog managed to break into the shrine, but it was handled. The head monk then discusses the demon Siren captured. He heard from the people that the demon devours spirits. Siren confirms what Muka said, but he refuses to spare him. He assumes that if he cannot find spirits to devour anymore, he must be looking for humans. Meanwhile, in a prison, the demon named Gempachi is chained. Faintly, Seren's voice can still be heard. He says that the demon won't be able to distinguish between good and evil. He is sure that one day the demon would attack humans. The next morning at the hotel, Sosuke woke up. He tells Shino that he will go outside for a while. After that, Shino goes back to his bed. Suddenly, he is surprised by the presence of a huge white dog. It turns out to be Satomi's dog. Satomi shows up and stands next to his pet. Shino states it has been 5 years since their first encounter. Satomi is quite surprised that Shino still remembers him while Sosuke seems to forget it. Shino tells him that Sosuke almost doesn't remember anything about the incident 5 years ago. Satomi approaches Shino and wonders he is still a child and doesn't grow up although 5 years have passed. Satomi then talks about Murasame. He states Murasame is a mysterious demon sword that no one knows its true nature. Furthermore, he explains that some people believe it is a god, while others claim it is a spirit, or it is either a curse or a disaster. The sword slashed all demons, conquered all spirits, and subdued everything formless on earth. However, the one who wields Murasame will get the effect from it. Satomi feels that Shino's body has ceased aging as the effect of Murasame. He is worried that Shino will suffer horrifying death, as it is illogical that Shino keeps a god in his body. Shino stands up and states he won't die that easily. He then shows his hand and states he has many lives in his body. He then summons Murasame in a form of a huge crow. He then asks if Satomi's hospitality is to make him pay back for the incident in the past. Just then, Sosuke appears while carrying food. He greets Satomi and Shino and states that the capital will get shocking news if the scene leaks out. Both Satomi and Shino realize it and stay calm. While enjoying breakfast, they talk about Hamaji. According to Satomi, Hamaji is one of the 4 houses' manners and they will head over after they finish breakfast. Meanwhile, Kobungo still holds grudges against the monks. Gempachi has been missing for a week and he is sure that the monks capture him. His father comes and talks about his sister who had died. His sister loves Gempachi a lot and he certainly wouldn't let something like this happen. His father understands Kobungo's feelings, but he asks Kobungo to control his anger when he meets the monks of the Shugetsuin sect. According to his father, they are not people who respond to confrontation directly. His father leaves after that. Kobungo then recalls his past. He and Gempachi were in the blizzards, facing a dreadful danger. Elsewhere in his cell, Gempachi recalls the same thing. On the other hand, Hamaji asks Kaname if he and the foxes are the only members of Osaki in this huge manor. Kaname calmly replies that he has parents, but he barely sees them. Hamaji then asks if he feels lonely. Kaname then puts his cup down and states that he wants to keep her more because she said that. At the same time, Satomi, Sosuke, and Shino arrive at the manor. Hamaji shows up and throws her shoes towards Shino. She is annoyed that they take a long time to get there. After that, Hamaji rushes to hug Shino. Shino asks her if she was treated badly by the foxes. Hamaji tells him that the foxes are not bad. They even gave her new clothes, shoes, and other stuff. She also had 3 meals a day and took naps. Shino and Sosuke are surprised that Hamaji had a good time. Kaname appears and tells them Hamaji can live there forever if she wants. He then introduces himself to Shino and the others. Shino looks at him with a stern look because he kidnapped Hamaji. However, Kaname argues that he didn't kidnap her but invited her instead. After that, Kaname invites them to his house because he has prepared a feast. Shino and Sosuke immediately follow Kaname into the manor. Outside, Satomi apologizes to Hamaji for what Osaki's family did to her and enters the manor after that. Meanwhile, Hamaji stands still and feels she has seen him before. In the afternoon, Kaname invites them to a city tour. Hamaji and Kaname look like a couple who go out on a date. There, Sosuke asks Shino about his relationship with Satomi. Shino tells him it is nothing. After that, a dog approaches Sosuke. Sosuke looks at it and strokes its head. Suddenly, all the dogs in that area walk towards Sosuke and surround him. Behind him, Hamaji explains to Kaname that Sosuke is popular with dogs. Meanwhile, an insect demon secretly watches over them. It says that it smells like the scent of a spirit. Surely, a spirit pretends to be a human. Shino feels a suspicious gaze, but as he looks at the roof, he cannot find anything. It turns out the demon has left and headed to Saren. The demon gets into Saren's ear and the monk smirks. Suddenly, many demonic insects flew around the monk. After that, Saren and several monks get to meet Gempachi in his cell. Saren states that he hasn't eaten for a week and calls him a demon. Gempachi laughs as he looks at Saren. He mocks him and says that his brother kicked him out. Saren gets angry and commands the insects to get him. The insects attack Gempachi and he screams due to the attack. Saren laughs at him and asks Gempachi to show his true demon form. However, Gempachi yells at the monk, asking him to shut up, Gempachi thinks about Nui, Kobungo's sister, whom he loves the most. He wonders when Nui will take him from there. Gempachi wonders if he can meet her again if he surrenders. Meanwhile, Kaname is enjoying his wine. Hamaji appears and protests how he can drink wine at late night. Kaname then asks Hamaji if she will leave with Shino and Sosuke. Hamaji teases him that he will get lonely if she leaves. Kaname replies even though Hamaji is not cute, he enjoys the time he spent with her. Hamaji comments that he is such a glib talker. Meanwhile, Sosuke finishes bathing and approaches Shino. Seeing Sosuke showered in his dog form, Shino helps him dry his hair. That is when Sosuke asks Shino how he knows Satomi. Shino says it is secret and none of his business. Sosuke gets mad hearing that. Shino apologizes and explains that he and Satomi met for the first time 5 years ago. He thinks Sosuke and Hamaji won't remember it, but Satomi was the one who rescued them from Otsuka village. Shino recalls his bloody experience 5 years ago. He cried in front of Sosuke and Hamaji who were lying down helplessly, while the entire village was burned down. That time, Satomi came and talked to Shino that he could wait for his death like other people or obtain immortality by planting a monster inside of him. Satomi asked him to choose one of them while reaching out his sword towards Shino's body. Shino tells Sosuke that since that day, he promised Satomi to pay back what he did. That's why he said it is none of Sosuke's business. Shino states he doesn't regret taking Murasae because even though he is trapped in his 13-year-old body, he can survive. He also feels thankful that he still can be with Sosuke and Hamaji. As long as he is with them, he won't feel lonely and continues to live no matter how his condition is. The next morning, they walk around the city. Hamaji and Kaname look like they are going on a date, while Sosuke and Shino walk casually behind. Suddenly, Hamaji appears and puts ice cream in Shino's mouth. Hamaji explains it is an ice cream made of the animal's liver that is famous in the capital. Shino is shocked because he hates the animal's liver. Meanwhile, Kobungo goes to the police headquarters and asks about Genpachi's whereabouts, but they tell him that Gempachi went missing when he was on duty. Kobungo cannot accept it and wants to know where his friend is. The police throw him out of the headquarters and he accidentally hits Shino again. After that, Kobungo takes Sosuke and Shino to his house. His father is surprised to see his son bring people to his home. Kobungo then asks his mother to prepare food for them. Meanwhile, Hamaji is annoyed that Shino and Sosuke are missing. Kaname tells Hamaji not to worry about them. He believes they are together and they will be fine. In the afternoon, Shino finished his meal. Shino, Sosuke, and Kobungo walk around the city. Shino thanks Kobungo for the free meal, while Kobungo wonders how Shino can have such a big appetite. Shino asks him why he keeps getting into fights every day. Kobungo then tells him about Shogetsu Institute. Shino realizes it means the monks in the shrine yesterday. Kobungo tells them that those monks capture a person he considers his own bother, but he doesn't explain further and leaves. Later that night, Sosuke and Shino go to meet Satomi. Satomi then shows them 2 gems. Shino is excited to see the gems. He didn't expect to see his gem back. Shino states the gems are a very valuable legacy. Satomi says that there are 6 more gems like that. Shino is shocked to find out there are other than himself and Sasuke had the gem. Satomi explains that the gems come from Fusheim and 8 demons. According to him, it is a legend passed down to his family. Satomi then tells them the legend. Long ago, there was a woman named Tamazusa who came to Japan from the Asian continent. She used her beauty and cunning persuasive skills. In that way, she tricked people one by one into bringing them to her imperial court. The Dark Ages befell Japan afterward. Chaos reigned everywhere. People killed each other and the kingdom fell into ruin. Then a girl appeared accompanied by 8 young men. That's where Satomi ends his story. He explains that there are 8 owners of the gems including Shino and Sosuke. After that, Satomi asks them to find 6 other gems with their respective owners. Shino protests because he feels it is impossible to find them among the many people around the world. Shino suggests that Satomi put an advertisement in the newspaper. Satomi states that he likes looking for gem owners in secret. Shino still finds it difficult to do. He also states that the gem will connect Sosuke with his biological parents. That's when Sosuke speaks up. He agrees to help Satomi, and he leaves the room after that. Shino wants to go after him, but Satomi holds him back. Satomi asks if Shino noticed anything strange from Sosuke in the last 5 days ago. Shino doesn't understand what Satomi means. After that, Satomi asks if Sosuke can transform into another thing besides Yoshiro. Shino says he can't. Satomi then says that Shino hasn't noticed it yet. He wants to tell them something, but Shino decides not to listen to that. Shino states that even though there is something different from Sosuke, he believes that Sosuke will still be Sosuke. Meanwhile, Kobungo's father asks the monks to release Gempachi. He says that Gempachi should have married his daughter, but the monks claim that his daughter had committed suicide because of Gempachi. Kobungo's father denies it. He says that Nui died in an accident. He explains that Gempachi was there all the grieving times. He prostrates himself and asks that Gempachi can be released. But the monks say that Gempachi is a demon. Siren then tells them to kick him out of the shrine. After that, Siren goes to the prison again. He feels excited to see Gempachi, who is being tortured by the demon bugs. Siren believes Gempachi will surely reach his limit soon. Meanwhile, Gempachi cannot take it any longer. He pictures Nui and screams out loud. Lightning flashes around him and a tremendous roar is created. After that, Gempachi turns into a terrible creature and breaks the prison. Everyone in the capital feels the thunder. Gempachi manages to escape while several monks who are with Siren die crushed by the rubble. Siren is satisfied because he succeeds in proving that Gempachi is a demon. He laughs in the destroyed room. Meanwhile, Gempachi began to sniff out the scent of spirits all over the city. He is very eager to devour all the spirits there. He begins to look here and there to find the whereabouts of the tempting spirit. On the other hand, Shino goes after Sosuke, who is running fast. He still wonders why Sosuke accepted Satomi's unreasonable request. As they are discussing that matter, Shino suddenly feels a sense of impending danger. He looks here and there looking for the threat. After that, he runs in one direction. Sosuke gets to follow Shino. They stop in front of a building. On top of it, Gempachi in his demon form is waiting, ready to attack them. Shino jumps onto the roof and asks Sosuke to rescue the townspeople. He doesn't want victims to arise due to the incident. After that, Shino jumps in front of Gempachi. He has never fought a demon before and he is curious about that. He then jumps away from Gempachi to lure him. As he expected, the demon darts to follow him. In the town, everyone is shocked to see Shino and Gempachi. Meanwhile, Kobungo glimpses Gempachi and recognizes him. He rushes to chase where Gempachi and Shino have gone. On the other hand, Shino feels something strange because the demon's scent resembles that of a human. After that, he goes into a quiet place. He stops on a bridge and draws his sword. Shino is still curious if his opponent is a demon or a human. That time, Gempachi launches a lightning strike towards Shino. Despite successfully dodging the lethal attack, Shino is eventually caught by the demon. Suddenly, both of them see flashes of the past when No was killed and people cried over her. Gempachi suddenly backs away after seeing the flash, while Shino believes that what he's fighting is a human. Not long after that, Sosuke in his dog form appears there. Shino tells him that the figure earlier is a human. Shino and Sasuke watch Gempachi crying on the bridge. The demon hunter monks appear. By using the demon insects, they all launch attacks. Shino manages to fend off the insects. He stands face to face with Siren, but apparently the monk recognizes the sword in Shino's hand. After that, he mobilizes all the monks to launch an arrow attack. Immediately, dozens of arrows go in their direction. Shino manages to fend off a few, but Sasuke suggests that they flee to the river immediately. Sosuke is stabbed by several arrows while protecting Shino. After that, Shino, Sosuke, and Gempachi jump into the river to escape. Meanwhile, Hamaji is worried because she hasn't heard about Shino and Sosuke yet. In front of her, Kaname sits calmly. He tells Hamaji to go to school tomorrow because Shino and Sosuke will be in the capital for quite a long time. Elsewhere, Shino, Sosuke, and Gempachi survive because the mysterious black creature in Shino's pocket suddenly bulges and turns into a float. Shino is worried about Sosuke, but Sosuke states he only suffers minor injuries. Shino gets to send Murasame to tell Satomi about the incident. Meanwhile, Shino is surprised to see the human form of Gempachi, who is lying fakely behind him. On the bridge, Siren is annoyed that his quarry has escaped. He is sure that what Shino was holding was the demonic sword Murasame. Afterward, he commands the monks to search in all directions until they find the whereabouts of the fugitives. The next day, Shino opens his eyes and realizes he is in Kobungo's house. Nearby, Sasuke has been treated. Not long after, Yatsufusa, Satomi's giant dog, appears there. Kobungo then comes to check on the condition of his guests. After that, Shino and Kobungo talk about Gempachi, the demon the monks talked about. Gempachi gets serious injuries from last night's attack, but that is when he appears and approaches them. Kobungo tells Shino what happened to Gempachi and him. Several years ago, there was a crisis in which bandits took some villagers as hostages, and one of the hostages was a royal named Princess Sai. Kobungo was sent as a military volunteer under the command of Gempachi to handle the crisis. But the journey to the village was terrible and the snowstorm kept occurring. Some soldiers decided to retreat. Those who kept walking forward dropped out due to the cold and starvation, and they started attacking each other. The fight among the soldiers happened. Gempachi and Kobungo fell, but they hoped to continue living. Surprisingly, they survived the incident, and it turns out they also have 2 of 8 legendary gems. When they returned to the city, Nua had been killed in an accident. Everyone cried over her, including Gempachi, who loved the girl very much. Gempachi's nature changes and has tendencies to commit suicide, but strangely, even though he hurts himself many times, he always recovers and continues to live. Neither of them remember what happened in the blizzard incident. What is clear is that they saw Satomi coming with his dog Spirit, and he rescued the Imperial members who were being held hostage. Shino asks why Satomi wasn't sent there to handle the matter alone, but it turns out that the military won't ask the church a favor. After Kobungo finished his story, he asks Shino to tell his story. On the other hand, Saren goes to see the head monk. He asks about Murasame, but the head monk doesn't want to tell him because he thinks Saren is not as kind as his brother. Saren is annoyed and he secretly attacks the head monk. After that, he takes over the shrine and starts to carry out his plan. One afternoon, Kanaim picks up Hamaji from school. It is then that the demon insects fly towards them and attack Hamaji. Luckily, Hamaji is only injured on the cheek. Kanaim goes on rampage and brings out his fox spirit Jinko. In an instant, Jinko darts off and finishes off the insects. Kanaim is fed up with the attack and plans to take this up with the monks. That night, Saren leads the monks to Kobungo's house. The house suddenly caught on fire and is surrounded by the monks. Shino and Sosuke immediately handle the monks while Kobungo and Gempachi face Saren and some of his subordinates. Saren then tells the truth about Nue. He says that Nue was pregnant with a foreign man while Gempachi was on duty. Hearing that Gempachi survived the blizzard incident, Nue decided to commit suicide as she didn't know what to say to Gempachi. Gempachi is consumed with Saren's words and he goes berserk. He transforms into his demon form and annihilates the monks and injures Saren's arm. Seeing the outcome, Saren tells his troops to retreat. However, Kanaim appears and launches attacks on them and wipes them out. At the same time, Shino uses his sword to make it rain. In an instant, the fire went out. In Osaki's manor, there is a forbidden area that is inhabited by a giant snake and a chosen human. They are curious about Shino, who is specially invited by Satomi. One day, Shino almost gets into the area but is stopped by Satomi because there is another inhabitant in that area who cannot be disturbed. Shino is horrified and runs away. Sometime later, he accidentally bumps into a mysterious girl. She is a white-haired girl whom Shino has never seen before. When she sees Murasame's eyes on Shino's arm, the girl immediately runs away in fear. After that, Shino is informed that the girl is Mizuki Ayan. She is one of the 4 houses of the sacred beast that is chosen by the snake spirit. All this time, Ayan never shows up, so Shino is quite lucky to see her. After that, Hamaji asks Shino to send a bouquet of flowers to Ayan because Hamaji wants to befriend her. Shino then goes to see the girl and gives her the flowers. However, Kamin forgets to tell him that the area where Ayan lies is dangerous. Shino walks in the forbidden area and meets the mysterious figure called Chikage. Chikage is the guardian deity of the area. She looks furious with Shino and won't accept what he is doing. Suddenly, Sosuke appears and keeps Shino's head down. He then apologizes to Chikage for what happened. Chikage tells Sosuke to show his guilt by cutting his arm off. As he is about to do that, Ayan shows up and stops them. Ayan argues that Shino wanted to deliver the flowers and wanted to befriend her. As a result, Shino and Sosuke are released. Since then, Ayan shows up in front of the people, but she is not allowed to leave the manor. One day, there will be a firework festival in the town. Shino meets Chikage to ask permission so that Ayan can watch the fireworks. Chikage refuses as she's afraid that something might happen to Ayan. Shino suggests that she send one of Kanaim's foxes to guard her. Finally, Chikage agrees and permits Ayan. At the festival, Ayan has a good time with her new friends. She tries many things and walks around the festival. On the other hand, Shino gets to meet Chikage. Chikage praises Shino that he can make Ayan be friends with others. As a reward, Chikage will tell him his real name. His name is Hibiki, and she transforms into a giant white snake. Before leaving, Hibiki gives him a mysterious crystal egg. Sometimes later, Shino asks for some money to go to a village that has a mysterious case. In the newspaper, it is reported that 5 villagers went to the forest and suffered mysterious diseases. The villagers wanted to find new water sources because the village suffers from drought. The rumor said the 5 villagers passed through the forbidden area that is guarded by a large monster. Shino states it is related to the mysterious figure that keeps appearing in his dream. After that, Shino leaves for the village by train alone. Sosuke is late to notice that Shino has gone. After asking Satomi, he leaves to follow Shino. On the way, he encounters Kobungo and Gempachi. Finally, they go to the village together. Meanwhile, Shino has arrived at the forest. He wanders with Murasame. Suddenly, he slips and falls into the ravine. Luckily, he didn't get hurt. However, he loses Sosuke's pearl that he keeps. He searches for the pearl here and there but cannot find it. Suddenly, a huge ape appears before him. Shino asks the monster if he sees his pearl. The monster leaves for a while and returns and throws something at Shino. Shino catches it, but it is not the pearl, but a gold nugget. He nags that it is not what he is looking for, but it can't be helped since he cannot expect a giant monster to be looking for a tiny object. Sosuke and the others arrive at the forest. Shino apologizes to Sosuke for missing his pearl. Sosuke then carries Shino, who is shivering because of the rain. Finally, they arrive at the dry village not far from there. They are immediately put into jail because it is discovered that they are from the forest. It turns out the 5 people who had the disease also looked fine when they came out of the forest. However, they suddenly began to decay after a while. The news about outsiders going from the forest is heard by Dr. Seiki Angan. She heads to meet them in the jail and states they have to undergo a test to see if they are infected with the disease or not. Seiki is accompanied by a bald doctor who surprisingly knows Gempachi. It turns out he joined the military army several years ago. On the other hand, a man named Inusaka Kino is looking inside the jail. He recognizes Sosuke as a person who harmed him several years ago, and he intends to get revenge. Sometimes later, Shino and the others are sent to be healthy. They then go around the village. Sosuke goes to an abandoned church and cleans it up. In the afternoon, when he finished cleaning up, Inusaka Kino appears and draws his sword towards Sosuke. He charges forward and attacks Sosuke. Shino comes and looks at Kino, who stabs Sosuke in his shoulder. Shino enters and stops the fight. Because Kino refuses to stop, Shino draws his sword and fights him, but Kino gets his sword off his hand in one strike. Kino then corners Shino and Sosuke. As they asked Inusaka Kino why he did that, Kino starts talking about the massacre that Sosuke did several years ago. Sosuke doesn't understand what he means. Later, Sosuke transforms into a dog. Kino is shocked to see this because the man who attacked him couldn't change himself into a dog. Just then, a woman named Kokono appears and stops Kino. She explains that Sosuke is not the one who did it. Kokono apologizes for what happened and is willing to do something to help Shino for an apology. Shino then states he is looking for his gem. After that, Kobungo treats Sosuke. He sees the mark on Sosuke's back that is similar to Shino and Gempachi. Kobungo says he has a similar mark on the buttock. As he wants to show it, Sosuke is reluctant to see it. Not long after that, Dr. Sakuraba Joji meets Seiki and Shino's group. He tells them people want to go to the forest and look for gold. They found out that Shino got the gold from the forest. Seiki is shocked and worried. She doesn't want people to get hurt. Meanwhile, Shino feels the forest is not quite dangerous. He wonders why rain falls only in the forest area. Meanwhile, Seiki recalls her past when she was in the forest. She knew 2 monkeys. One of them is huge and the other small. She named the small one Asahi, while the giant monkey Shinonami. They were close and promised to me again. However, she never came back as she had to leave the village. When she returned, she has grown up. Rumor says the monkeys hate adult people. Sometime later, the group and Shino leave for the forest. Arriving there, Murasane hits an invisible barrier and shatters it into pieces. Not long after that, rain pours down in the forest area. Suddenly, the giant monkey appears and goes berserk, attacking the villagers. Meanwhile, Seiki goes after them. On the way, she meets Asahi, who is dying. After accompanying him for the last time, Seiki continues her way. Not far from there, Kokono is watching and she will get closer when Seiki leaves. There, Kokono finds the gem that Shino is looking for. Meanwhile, Shino tries to fend off the water attack from the monkey. Shortly after, Seiki arrives and stops the fight and reunites with the monkey. The weather changes and they all go back to the village peacefully. The next day, Shino and the others decide to leave the village. Shino has obtained his gem back and there is nothing for him to do anymore. One day, a blizzard occurred in a forest area. A man named Inuyama Dosetsu was dying. He fell in the snow and suddenly a beautiful tune was heard. A snow spirit appeared and asked him if he wanted to continue living. Dosetsu says he wants to live as he has a little sister. Time passed and Dosetsu was now on the train heading somewhere. At a station, Shino and his group board the train. Coincidentally, Shino and Sosuke sat on the same seat as Dosetsu. The rain suddenly pours down all the way. Shino says it will be snowing and surprisingly it comes true. In his station, a spirit hunter monk gets on board. He comes and attacks Dosetsu, but the snow spirit appears and attacks the monk and traps him in ice. Shino recognizes Yukime, the snow princess. Dosetsu is surprised to find Yukime, who gets along well with Shino. Shino tells him he met Yukime when he got lost in the snow in the forest. After that, Dosetsu asks Shino how he could be free from Yukime because he couldn't get close to any girl since Yukime was latching on to him. Shino explains Yukime won't show up in summer. The fact that she shows up is because she wants to protect Dosetsu. Shino wants to tell him what spirit sacrifices to make a contract with humans, but Yukime asks him not to tell him. Later, they arrive at the capital. Shino and Sosu get off the train while Dosetsu continues his journey. Before the train departs, Dosetsu asks Shino and Sosuke's names and they introduce themselves to each other and then separate ways. Dosetsu recalls the first time he met Yukime. He said he wanted to live for his sister. Even though they were separated for long, he wished that he could stay by her side one day. Sometime later, Hamaji has to go to the school's dormitory. She moves out and makes Kanami sad. One night, Satomi tells Shino that Hamaji forgot to bring some of her books. Shino and Sosuke then go to the dormitory to deliver her books. In the dormitory, Hamaji meets a girl named Kumamai Suzu. She is her roommate. They immediately get close to each other and talk about many things. Suzu tells her that even though the rules in the dormitory are strict, they don't get caught by a supervisor student named Kobayako or Ruri. After that, Murasing appears and tells Hamaji that Shino and Sosuke are waiting for her in the backyard. Hamaji then rushes to see her brothers. Shino gives her book and leaves after that. Just then, he sees a mysterious ghost that makes him faint. The next morning, everyone mocks him because he fainted. Shino tells them there was a scary doll. He draws the ghost on a piece of paper and shows it to the others. However, they claim it is such a cute doll. At school, Hamaji meets Ruri. It turns out Ruri knows about Shino who sneaked into the dormitory last night. However, because Hamaji is a new student there, Ruri will let her off for this time. After that, Ruri talks about an invisible guard who is guarding the dorm with top security. That night, Shino, Sosuke, and Kino go to the dormitory to look for the ghost. After looking for her and there, the doll appears and attacks them for violating the rules. Sosuke in his dog form stares at the ghost intensely. Sosuke knows the doll is the guardian of the dormitory. After that, Sosuke and Shino leave. The following day, Hamaji and Suzu are walking around the dormitory. Suzu says she forgets something and goes back to her room. Ruri approaches Hamaji and invites her to lunch together. Hamaji refuses as she has promised to have lunch with Suzu. Ruri wonders who Suzu is because as far as she knows, Hamaji lives alone in her room. Panic, Hamaji rushes to her room. Arriving at her room, she looks for Suzu but cannot find her anywhere. There is only a doll lying on the bed. Hamaji picks up the doll. One day, when Sosuke holds an event at the church, a beautiful woman with golden eyes comes and sits next to Shino. She says she feels not worthy because she is a sinner. Shino gives the amulet to the woman named Kohaku. On the other hand, Kino is still investigating a man who did a massacre in the past. He recalls the incident. The man who looks like Sosuke fought against him. Kino got to injure him and slash his left eye. But Kino got severe injuries on his chest and his heart was broken. That was when he met Kokono for the first time. On the other hand, Kohaku, who is a prostitute in a brothel and is popular among the men because of her beautiful golden eyes, welcomes the visitor. That night, Shino meets Kino and Kokono. He notices something from both of them. Shino feels there is a part of Kino that is not his, and he also knows that Kokono doesn't have a heart. Kokono finally tells what happened in the past. She found Kino was dying and he was alive even though his heart was ruined. That's why Kokono, who is actually Yashheim, gave her heart to him. The next morning, Kohaku wakes up weak. She coughs blood and realizes that she doesn't have much time left. Just then, a man that looks like Sosuke but loses his left eye appears. He offers Kohaku to give him her eye for a longer life. That afternoon, Shino and Gempachi walk around the town and meet Kino. The man who resembles Sosuke appears and shocks everyone. Surprisingly, the man recognizes Shino and knows the memories that Sosuke forgot. After bidding farewell, the man leaves. Shino rushes to meet Satomi and tells him about the man. Satomi tells him that Sosuke lost half of his soul 5 years ago. As a result, Sosuke might be in danger if he cannot find his other half soon. That night, the man who looks like Sosuke has obtained the golden eye he dreams of. He stands on top of a building with a mysterious figure and talks about Shino. The next morning, Shino accompanies Sosuke in taking care of a church on the outskirts of the town. Shino sits down under the tree. Kohaku comes and talks to him. Kohaku tells him that he looks like her son in his village. She lies to him, talking about her family and her home in the village. Shino asks her why she works in the brothel, but she doesn't answer him clearly. After that, Kino meets Shino and asks him if he knows the man from yesterday. Gempachi pours some water into them for making a ruckus. They dry themselves, and at that time, Shino sees a mark on his body. Without he is realizing it, Kino also has the gem he is looking for. That night, Shino goes to the brothel to see Kohaku. There, Kohaku is fighting with a man named Soichi. The man points out a gun at her. They argue and he accidentally pulls the trigger. The bullet pierces Shino's neck and he is covered in blood. Shino loses consciousness. Suddenly, a terrifying monster awakens from Shino's body and devours Soichi. Kohaku cries and hugs his body. Gempachi arrives and brings him. Gempachi brings him to Satomi's place. Surprisingly, the wound on Shino's neck is already closed up. Not long after that, he gains his senses and looks fine like nothing happened. Sosyu goes to the church and finds Kohaku there. Sosyu then tells her that Shino is fine. Kohaku feels relieved and leaves. Meanwhile, Shino starts to lose control of himself. He goes on a rampage and the monster starts coming out of his body. Suddenly, Shino transforms into an adult man with long hair. Satomi tries to calm him, but he realizes that Shino is still short on prey after losing so much blood. Therefore, Satomi lets Shino suck his blood to satisfy his desires. Elsewhere, Kohaku walks back to the brothel. He recalls her journey when she was sold at the age of 8, and she started working in the brothel. She made friends with a girl named Shitos. Returning to the present, Shitos greets Kohaku, who looks weak. Kohaku says she will be fine and walks back to her room. But she suddenly falls and coughs blood. The next morning, Kaname visits Satomi. He is surprised to find Satomi injured. He then treats his wound. Gempachi and Kobungo come to talk about Kohaku. As they talk about Kohaku's past, Kobungo opens the curtain and he finds Shino in his 18-year-old figure. He is shocked that Shino looks handsome in his adult form. Meanwhile, Satomi is informed that Shitos was killed last night, while Kohaku disappeared. Apparently, Kohaku comes from the village that was attacked by the bandits 3 years ago. On the other hand, Kohaku goes to see Sosyu to make a confession, weeping and lying prostrate. Wings suddenly appear from her back. Shino in his adult form shows up. When Kohaku feels she likes a demon, Shino states that she is beautiful and looks like an angel. She is moved and prepared to accept her punishment. Shino draws his sword and executes her. After that, Shino sits down under the tree and his body suddenly returns to his 13-year-old boy. One afternoon, Shino meets the man who becomes the other half of Sosuk. The man talks about the memories of the past. They were lost in the forest. The man then secretly takes the gem from Shino's pocket while he hugs him. After that, Shino and the others hear that the church has found out about the incident in the brothel, and they are going to the capital to investigate. It turns out they are after Hamaji. Afraid that something may happen to her, Shino immediately heads to the church. There is a barrier set up at the entrance, but Murasame manages to break it. As he enters, Shino meets Lilith, who tries to stop him. Both of them fight with all their might, but Lilith seems to have the upper hand. Cornered, Shino runs away and meets Satomi, and he hides behind his robe. After it is safe, Shino gets to find Hamaji. He finally finds her and invites her to go from there. That night, Shino gathers with his friends. They then show their gems. Shino is surprised to find that they have the gems he is looking for. However, as he is about to take out his gem, he realizes that his gem is gone. This is the end of Hakkenden Season 1. Thank you to keep watching the content from this channel. Remember to like and subscribe to keep you updated with our latest content. See you in the next video.